Have you ever noticed how history remembers the warriors? Alfred the Great, who fought off the Vikings. Æthelstan, who crushed his enemies at Brunanburh. But what about the king who didn't need to fight? The king who ruled so strongly that no one dared challenge him? That man was Edgar the Peaceful, and his story might just change the way you think about medieval kings. Edgar was born in 943 into a family that didn't exactly enjoy long, peaceful lives. His grandfather was Edward the Elder, his uncle was Æthelstan, and his father was Edmund I, a king stabbed to death at a feast when Edgar was still a toddler. After Edmund's death, England lurched from one short reign to another, until Edgar's older brother Eadwig took the throne. Eadwig was a disaster. On the very day of his coronation, he abandoned his own feast to run off with his mistress, and, if the chroniclers are to be believed, her mother as well. That wasn't just a scandal, it was a disaster for royal authority. Nobles turned against him, bishops muttered disapproval, and before long, half the kingdom had broken away. And who did they rally around instead? Not Eadwig. They backed his younger brother Edgar. By the time Eadwig died in 959, Edgar was just 16 years old. But in that moment, he inherited all of England. And what he did with it would echo for centuries. Now, his nickname, the Peaceful, might make him sound soft. But don't be fooled. Edgar's peace wasn't weakness. It was strength. He kept a fleet patrolling England's coasts, making sure Viking raiders thought twice before landing. He commanded the loyalty of the Welsh and Scottish rulers, and in 973, at the height of his reign, he staged an unforgettable display of power. Chroniclers tell us that at Chester, on the River Dee, 8 subordinate kings from across Britain rode Edgar in his royal barge. Think about that. Not a sword raised, not an arrow loosed. Just the sight of 8 kings straining at the oars while Edgar sat at the stern, the undisputed overlord of Britain. And he didn't just flex his muscles. Edgar reshaped the kingdom itself. He worked hand in hand with the church, supporting reformers like Dunstan, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Oswald of Worcester. Under his backing, monasteries were revived, rebuilt, and disciplined. These monasteries weren't just holy houses. They were schools, libraries, and cultural centers. The art, the manuscripts, the learning of late Anglo-Saxon England, they flourished because Edgar gave them peace to thrive. He also put a stamp on law. Edgar's codes weren't just about punishing criminals. They were about order, fairness, and building a moral kingdom. He wanted markets regulated, weights and measures standardized, and communities held responsible for keeping the peace. Imagine living in a time when the rules of justice were patchy, depending on who ruled locally. Under Edgar, the kingdom started to feel like one system, one England. But maybe his greatest legacy came in 973 at his magnificent second coronation at Bath. Now wait, why his second coronation? Edgar had already been king for years. This wasn't about legitimacy. It was about theater. With Archbishop Dunstan leading the ceremony, Edgar's coronation was designed to show kingship as something sacred, divinely ordained. The anointing, the oaths, the blessings, it set the template. In fact, much of the ceremony used for British monarchs today, more than 1,000 years later, comes directly from Edgar's coronation. That was his genius, not just ruling, but shaping how monarchy itself was imagined. Of course, Edgar wasn't perfect. His personal life was messy. He had multiple wives or consorts, and his sons by different mothers would later tear the kingdom apart. His eldest, Edward, would become king after him, but was murdered in suspicious circumstances, earning the name Edward the Martyr. Another son, Æthelred, would go down in history as the Unready, a ruler plagued by Viking invasions. Edgar kept the peace in his lifetime, but he couldn't stop the storm that came after. In 975, Edgar died suddenly, still in his early 30s. His reign had lasted just 16 years, but what a 16 years they were. No great wars, no famous last stands. Instead, something rarer, stability. Monasteries flourished. Trade grew. Kings across Britain paid homage. And England itself felt, for the first time, like a kingdom that could last. So why don't we remember Edgar as much as Alfred or Æthelstan? Maybe because peace isn't as dramatic as war. Battles make for great stories. Peace makes for quiet progress. But that progress mattered. Edgar's reign set the tone for English monarchy. He showed that a king didn't have to be just a warlord. He could be a lawgiver, a peacemaker, a patron of culture, a ruler who bound church and crown together. In the grand story of England, that might be just as important as winning on the battlefield. Edgar the Peaceful gave his kingdom what it needed most, a chance to breathe. If you think peace deserves just as much glory as war, hit that like button and subscribe for more forgotten stories of kings who shaped England.